Hey everyone, it's Norm Farrar, aka the Beard Guy here, and welcome to another Lunch with Norm, the rise of the micro brands.
Lunch with Norm. Lunch with Norm. Lunch with
I guess you guys are getting used to us running a couple of minutes late, but anyways, I'm not going to blame Kelsey. I guess that one's on me. All right. Today we have somebody that is the first time on the podcast, but not the first time the company's been on the podcast. You might remember we had a really great show with Chris Brewer. We're going to be featuring Chris Taylor on, and he is the director of Amazon advertising over at OMG Commerce. Now, Chris is going to be talking about his experience in auditing hundreds of Amazon accounts. What are the common denominators? And we're just going to kind of I'm not sure exactly where we're going to go today, but we're going to kind of go down those lines. So I think it's going to be really key that, especially if you're new to Amazon, to hear what Chris has to say. What are those things? What are those mistakes? What are the things that you need to do to make your listing better optimized? But before we do that, where is Mr. Kelsey?
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Kelsey. I've seen you so much this week.
I know it's been crazy. Just so much time together.
Did you see how Carlos was he was dead. I don't think he almost couldn't make the podcast. That's how sick I was yesterday.
Yeah, so we really appreciate Carlos coming on. But yeah, he was definitely feeling it. But welcome everyone. Welcome DK. Welcome Rad. We actually have another giveaway from Rad today. This is the week of Rad. So we're going to be giving out a 4-in-1 desktop charger today from Rad's company.
Oh, very cool.
That's available for
Thanks, Rad.
US, Canada, and Mexico. So we'll talk more about that later. But welcome Andrew. He is from Sao Paulo today. And let's see, smash those like buttons, share this to any Amazon fellows and friends. Dr. Cause is joining us from Los Angeles. Welcome, Simon. Happy Wednesday, everyone. And if you have any questions at all, put them in the comment section. And if you ever miss an episode, you're looking for highlights, you can check out our YouTube channel, Norman Farrar. That's where everything goes. And if you haven't yet, join our Beard Nation. That's our Facebook group. It's Lunch with Norm, Amazon FBA, and eCommerce Collective.
All right. Hey, and I think I just saw Simon on Seller Sessions. I was just on that podcast with Danny, and I thought I saw you there. Okay. So, yep, like you were saying, Kelsey, questions over into the comment section. We'll try to get to every question. If we don't, it'll be posted in our group. Okay. So I think that's it. I think we're done with that. You've told everybody to smash those like buttons and subscribe. And I have to say that how many times? 2 times or 3 times during the podcast? Is that correct?
Let's make it 3.
3 times. Okay, so that's once. All right, so sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy the podcast. Hello, sir.
Hey, Norm. Great to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey, no problem at all. It's great to, get you on here. This is kind of an interesting topic we'll be discussing today, especially for new users, not even experienced users. Always learning something about what other, especially agencies, see when they're looking at an Amazon listing, what they can pick up. And sometimes it's just these little things that can make a difference between a very successful listing or something that's okay to something that just sucks. So why don't we talk about, we're going to be talking specifically about auditing, but what is auditing?
Yeah, so when I do an Amazon audit, it is on the PPC side, though there is something to look at the product page, is it retail ready, conversion rate, things like that. But for us, it's basically doing a deep dive into their campaign structure, what is built, what's the structure in terms of naming convention, what's the setup with match types within the campaigns. Are they using all ad group types? Are they optimizing enough? Are they adding converting search terms? So it's essentially from start to finish, campaign build out, and then continual improvement of what's running. We review that and basically say, here's everything you're doing right. Here's things you can do better. And then here's things you're not utilizing at all. And it's interesting. I don't know how many I've done total. I know it's over 100, but there's a common thread with probably 70% of everything I'll present on these audit calls, the follow-ups after I do deep dive, that is almost the same. It's just customized to that client, right? Their category, their product, their goals, their KPIs, but the base theme is the same. So kind of prepping for this podcast, I'm really excited. I wanted to be able to give actual actionable nuggets to your listeners.
That's great. Okay, we do different types of marketing, content marketing, and we drive traffic over to Amazon. And the people that have great listings usually have great results.
Yeah.
The people, and these are usually the big complainers, the people that say, hey, this doesn't work, or search, find, buy doesn't work, or Facebook marketing doesn't work. You drive it over to either a search page or over to their listing. You're not responsible for that second click. You're not responsible. You can get people over to a search page or to the product listing, but if it sucks, you can't force that customer to click and buy the product.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's an issue that I see a lot. I see a lot of blame, but I don't see a lot of action being taken to improve the blame. A lot of the times it's not the agency or the person that's setting it up, and which could be the same person, like it could be the Amazon seller. But at the same time, if you don't take those little steps to improve your listing, because it might cost you $250 or it might cost you $500, like to get better images or whatever,
Yep.
you can't take it out on the agency or the person who's doing whatever it is to do your
I
marketing.
need you to talk to some of my clients.
Oh, yeah.
Let
No,
them know
no.
that. No, I kid. We have the best clients. I'm just messing around.
No, but that happens. We'll hear about it, and we've got to discuss it. It's we can get you to a certain point. We can't get a customer to click or to convert. That they have their own minds.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we can't press a button.
We try.
Yeah, we try. Okay, so just before we go any further, we're going to be giving away a really great giveaway today. So, Chris, why don't you tell everybody about what's happening?
Yeah, so what we're giving away is an hour consultation call with myself. And I'm going to throw in our CEO, Brett Curry. He doesn't know this. He's our Google and YouTube guy and the CEO, so he kind of does it all. That we want to look at your account, answer any questions you have, be able to consult, not just on the PPC side, but on the content side. So I am a data guy. I'm analytics. I can look at something and tell you right away, here's what I'm seeing. Brett Curry is more like, okay, you're doing this video, tweak this to boost your conversions and really show what you're trying to sell. And so that is something we're giving away. And I'm excited to do that and talk to your listeners and see how we can help.
That's great. What kind of value is that? Other than the priceless value.
Yeah, now that I added Brett, it's priceless. But I would put it at $500.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And this isn't something that happens every day, guys. So just hashtag Wheel of Kelsey. And Kelsey, are you just putting it on the same wheel?
No. So for Rad's giveaway, we're just going to do hashtag Rad. So RAD.
Hashtag Rad.
Just
Okay.
like this.
Very good. And the last thing before we get back to it is just that if you do want to have a second entry, tag 2 people, and you'll have that second entry into either the consulting or the prize from Rad. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's go through, we'll get to the action steps, but what do we got to do? What are some things that we have to look at to start to build out a better listing, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, so I would clarify a little bit on my end. I'm looking at the PPC side. So
right, but that comes down to the listing. Is that correct?
Yes, I will say most of the audit, probably 90%, is the campaign structure and what's being run there. Okay. And I've got some gems there. When it comes to the listing, I would say the basics. The title. What are you putting in that? Is it appropriate to what you're going after for the keywords that you want to be ranking for? It's changed a bit. I was listening to a few of your past podcasts, one of them, Brian Johnson,
Mhm.
which on a side note, when I started 5 years ago in the Amazon space, I took his Sponsored Product Academy. And that's how I got into it, and then kind of grew from there. It's not the same as it was years ago, where you're stuffing the keywords. You do
Right.
want to build that for the end customer, right, to convert. But you also want to tailor that so that you're not losing keywords and phrases that might be in the page or should be in the page that people are searching for. So like on our end, we do a mix of in-depth keyword research, looking at converting search terms and the data from the advertising platform that has done well, and also looking at competitors' pages and what they're ranking for, and even potentially showing for in sponsored ads, and kind of structure it with the title, bullet points, and back-end search terms to kind of fit within there everything you need to cover. And then obviously images on the page, EBC or A plus content, I still call it EBC, making sure that that's appropriate. I will say though that that's not my like main expertise. So we have someone on our team, Amber Norell, who's head of our full service offering, and
Mhm.
she's like content, all of that. So I'm more like, I can talk it a little bit, but the action stuff goes to her. Mine is more, okay, how do we get traffic to that? And how do we do that efficiently and scalably?
Okay, well, let's go over to that point. But I do have one thing to ask about the titles. I'm just curious. I've had a bunch of Amazon optimizers on, okay, and this is
Okay.
PPC or listing optimization, copywriters, and I get a mixed bag. And I'm just wondering what you're seeing. So it used to be, back in 13, 14, it was keyword stuffing. You stuffed everything,
Yeah.
you stuffed it everywhere. You then, I think it was 14, they started to say, oh, you don't have to put in plurals. You don't, like, the algorithm will pick it up. Then it went back to, oh, you got to stick in all these keyword phrases a
Yeah.
million times. Is it, I've heard, and we've been practicing shorter titles, not like just using main keywords, relevant keywords, but not repeating phrases over and over and over again. Like if you use the word knife, you wouldn't have to use the word knife again in the listing. Are you finding that?
I would say overall, yes. We do test that out. And when it comes to the title, I agree. Like the shorter is better. We used to be like massive.
A
We have a
novel.
Yeah, we have a client in the bedding category, and a competitor came out. This was like 3 years back, and ranked right away. And I think they're doing some black hat stuff, but their page title is just like Queen Sheets 10 times, just over and over, Queen Sheets, Queen Sheets, Queen Sheets. And don't do that now. So I will say
Yeah.
that. I don't think you need to duplicate. There are times on the back end and in the bullet points, we may have it twice just to be safe. We've tested it both ways. Not a huge difference. If you're doing it right overall, if you have a phrase twice or not, I don't think that's going to make the biggest impact. I will say we don't try to change titles too much, just because once you get kind of momentum there and it's established product, we more edit bullet points, and then the back end, if maybe new things are coming out through brand analytics or search things that we think are relevant that aren't currently in there at the keyword level. But to your point, I think those days are over where you've got to duplicate a lot.
Hmm.
And for the most part, we're not.
Okay. All right. So let's dig into PPC. Where do you want to start? Where,
Yeah.
like,
So
right at the start.
this is, yeah, I'm super pumped to jump into this. I figured I could talk high level first, right? Like structure, and then just the basic strategy pieces that I find are missing. And then if we have time, the campaign types. I've got
Hmm.
3 or 4 pieces for each that someone can listen to and then go to their own account and see what they're doing. And it's very simple to do. So if it works for you, I can start on that high level
Fantastic.
structure.
Okay.
So to kind of put some clarity to kind of the audits we do, I think our, I don't know, monthly sales for the clients we audit range from like 100K to like a couple million. Probably the average is 250 to 500. And I say that because it's interesting. There's accounts that are doing 2 mil a month that are making the same mistakes as someone doing 50 to 100,000 a month. So being newer and knowing this at the onset can really set you up for a competitive advantage, even against the big sellers. And so the first thing that I notice as kind of a common thread is naming structure. And it seems really simple, really straightforward, but I do a lot of audits where somebody maybe built campaigns themselves, tried another agency and then another agency, and they've got just a mess of campaigns. And it takes me an hour and a half to kind of dissect that and see what's actually built, what's running, and then tell them what to do. And when I talk to them, they're like, yeah, I don't really know what's going on there. Sales are coming in, performance is good, but when I talk about the pieces to scale more and make adjustments to see that growth, they don't know how to do that because it's kind of tied into this knot, if that makes sense. So I think being simple is best. If you've got a product and you're building up, 10 different campaign types: sponsor brand, sponsor display, sponsor video, sponsor product, and then the variations within it. Name the beginning the same. Have a structure that says, I know what's being built. So later, when you need to check that, when you need to see what things are doing in terms of performance, you can do that easily. And we've got some accounts with like 2,000 products. And so it can take us months to adjust things and restructure in a way that you can follow. And without being able to measure things appropriately, it's hard to take action on that. So that's like the first one. And so if you're new on Amazon, that's an easy one. Your campaigns, maybe you don't have any, maybe there's only a few. Keep that in mind as you scale. You don't want to go back and redo some of that work. And then the other thing is the utilization of all campaigns. And I'll go a little more in detail in a little bit, but you got sponsored product, auto, manual, and then for manual, keyword and product targeting. Sponsor brand, you've got keyword and product targeting, sponsor display, product targeting, audiences, and then sponsor and video. I would say on average about 50 to 60% of these are in use with the audits we do. And then within that, it's probably the top 20% of the product. So that 80-20 rule makes sense to start, where if you're an advertiser, you're like, hey, I'm going to go really strong on advertising with the top products. It does make sense, but we often see that these lower priority, lower selling products are kind of forgotten, right? You build a sponsored product campaign, maybe a sponsored brand, and then you build nothing else. And this is something I see with some of the big agencies, not to name anybody, but I'll look at it and be like, why aren't these built? And it's time. And a lot of these aren't able to be done within automation, like sponsored brand, sponsored display. And so the view from advertisers and some agencies is it's not worth the time because we're getting a better return from something that's easier to build and utilize that 80-20 rule. And I think in this case, that doesn't work, right? I do think that building out top products, top campaign types makes sense, but that takes maybe, let's say, 1 to 3 months, right? Depending on your size. But then as you continue, you should have that same structure for products with low sales. You should build out all campaign types for all products over time. And I'm not seeing that. Like I never see it where it's like over 80% are utilized. And I think like there's a lot to unpack there, and I will as we dig in. But those are the two things that really stand out when I first look at an account.
Very good. So are there anything when you're building out this structure? I'm kind of curious because I've seen these structures where there's hundreds or thousands of products, right?
Yep.
And they're completely unruly. Is there a way? Can you download a list? Can you manipulate the list where you can see it all in one glance rather than trying to find each product and try to figure it out?
Yeah. So what we do is it exists in a spreadsheet right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you can, put in a software, but when we build out, so let's say you've got, I don't know, 2 products, elderberry and vitamin D supplements, right?
You nailed my products. Okay, thanks a
lot. Basically, each row in a sheet would be that product, the campaign name, anchor, which might be elderberry, the ASIN, and then like something else we want to add to it. And then the variance at the end would be, is it sponsored product? Keyword, is it sponsored product? Auto. And we would name it in a way that it's very easy to, with a VLOOKUP and a couple other formulas, pull it out. And then we'd have a checklist across kind of those columns that says, is it built and what date? Just so we know when we built it. So when we're seeing performance and talking on it. And so that concept works with a few products, but if you have 1,000, we do the same. And what's cool is I can pull a campaign report and I can look at that anchor kind of checklist, for lack of better phrasing, I built in a spreadsheet, and with just a couple formulas, basically say, for each product, here's what's built, and then for each product, here's the performance overall, and then for each campaign type, because I've named it appropriately. It still is a lot of data. Like, it can be data paralysis. Look at 1,000 products and see their spend, their sales, their ACoS, their total sales, their tacos, and then like make a decision. But it's all there. So if you want to say, I want to look at these 2 products out of the 1,000, it's there. If you want to look at high level, it's there. It's still, again, a lot to look at, but we find that we need that, because when we started, I don't know, 5 years ago, and it was just me, like, I'm not a structured guy, right? I'm like, let's do it, let's test, let's talk it out, and then like it's there. And we've gotten better. So we've got an amazing team, and so that structure has helped, because as we've grown, it's like, oh, before it was just sponsor product and like sponsor brand, right? And it feels like the campaign types of like 3x. And so there's a lot more that you need to be aware of, and also, again, measure and then attribute. And we find that structure works for us. I'm sure other people do it different ways, but that's the way we do it.
There's a lot of PPC people out there. There's tons
yes.
of PPC people
and it's more by the day. Yep.
And anybody who's taken a course seems to be a PPC expert. You know, what are some questions you can ask when you're hunting for somebody, an agency to work with you?
Yeah, great question. And I'll preface this with, like, even though different agencies, different experts have slightly different strategies, it doesn't mean one is better or worse than the other. Right. Like, I build campaigns with the match types nested in ad groups. Other people do it at the campaign level because they want to adjust placements. I can't say one's better or worse, but it's just different. And so I think when you're talking to a PPC expert or an agency, you want to talk about how they do each step. Okay, how do you optimize? How do you track? How do you keep track? Like how we just talked about with the different campaigns. What do you do with all products, right? So like that is something I would ask, where it's like, hey, I've got X amount of products. What is your view on the campaign structure and build out for these? Are you going to give them some love? Because again, oftentimes that's not the case. I would ask about the reporting. That's a big one. Again, you can't decide actions if you're not knowing what's going on. I would ask about their experience. That's not the biggest thing. But one complaint we get from advertisers we talk to a lot is they've talked to somebody on a audit call or just talking to an agency, and they're like, man, that person was great. That person was an expert. But then they get somebody who's like brand new. And so I would ask, who am I going to get? Yeah. And brand new is not bad. I don't want to say like everyone's got to start somewhere, yeah. But understanding the support structure there so that you're not surprised and you're not disappointed and you know what you're getting into. And I think the agencies should do the same. Like we make a point to say, when we do these audits, if you're going to work with us, here's who you would work with. Here's their history, their experience, where they're going to shine with you. But we want to be upfront with that because that's probably our number 1 or 2 complaint from advertisers we talk to.
Yeah, I find a lot of people that I talk to in this space, they don't manage expectations. So, they oversell. And, yes. And even when we're talking ACoS and, tacos, it's unrealistic. Like a lot of the times, for example, I'll hear a product, I know the market, and I'll take a look at what they're targeting with the budget that they're targeting, with the keywords. I'm going, this is so unrealistic. They're never going to hit this. And this magic number of, you have to hit 22 or 23% ACoS to have an effective campaign or below. I don't know about you, but I'm not looking at that number. I'm looking at tacos, and that's it. If tacos is working, I really don't care how high my ACoS is, as long as my tacos is in line. Or if I'm trying to build out, a wider campaign, it might be effective for a bit. But a lot of the times, again, just talking to a lot of PPC people, you just find that they promise the world, and that just doesn't pull through. So expectations is something that. So what is I'm kind of blabbering here, but we've got a lot of, it's a third. beginner, intermediate, and experts listening to this podcast.
Okay.
What are the expectations when you're talking about ACOS?
Yeah,
What would
and
you tell somebody in general? I know it's really broad.
No, it's a fair question. It's always easier when there's data, right? So if I'm talking to somebody that's already running some ads, I can basically look at what they're running, get their margins or their goals, either one, and usually it's dictated by that. Look at their tacos and say, hey, here's a couple strategies, maybe conservative, moderate, and aggressive for growth, and what's within that, and ranges of spend. And you need ACOS, and it's tough. To your point, like some people can be stuck on that, and sometimes when I bring in tacos, a client or potential client will be like, like I'm up to something, right? And I'm like, no. Like you just take your margin, you minus the tacos, and you can figure out if you're going to make more money. And they're like, but I want a low ACOS. I don't want to lose money in the ad, and that's a slippery slope. And so I think looking at what it is you actually want to be doing with your account, with your products. Are you looking for growth? With your margin, are you okay with up to a break even to see that happen to begin with? Like for newer accounts, which are always tough. Those are the toughest to say, hey, here's the estimate. I'll normally be very straightforward and say, I would look at it as a set budget as a minimum that you want to go into and test and figure it out. Because I can guess. I don't like guessing, but I can guess and say, hey, maybe, you're new. If you spend $5K a month, you might be 45% ACOS and 30% tacos. And that works because you're 43% margin and there's room to move there. But I'll preface that with also, you might not get sales. Maybe we'll have to get data and analyze that and say, hey, we thought these terms would convert, and maybe the product page is a factor. So let's look at that. Maybe we need to go and pivot and go to longer tailed more aggressively and pull back on these broad terms. And so there's definitely almost a rabbit hole, but in a positive way, like a deep dive that happens as you kind of push past maybe that test. But in terms of expectations, I would be realistic with the client, but I'd like to say it's client by client, just because no one is the same in terms of that space. I know that's a terrible answer.
No, it's actually bang on. And I like how you approach it, where you kind of come in like a financial planner. Okay, if we go aggressive, or if we go, if you want to be risk free, so this is what you got to spend. These are kind of what your returns will be. So, yeah, and that's fair. But I think I've got a tougher question. And this is probably on everybody's mind right now. So Amazon's gone into these ASN restrictions. And I don't know about you, it's caused a lot of havoc with some of my clients. Right now, we had Glenn King on the other day, and it's cost them huge dollars because of some issues with Amazon. How are you adjusting, or how are you adjusting your strategy to these ASN restrictions, especially when you've got either a small person just launching or a very seasoned account, which based on their storage could just cost them an arm and a leg?
Man, it is tough. I remember when that update came out, I guess the 22nd or whatever, and it was like, okay, when I first read the first part of it, I'm like, yeah, cool. You can have new products. You don't have the limitation. And then kind of detailing, you're like, what is Amazon thinking?
That's exactly what I said.
I think we're all thinking that. Not like I've talked to some, I won't name names, but employees at Amazon, and they're like, yeah, we heard about this like last Friday. This was like, I talked to them Monday. They're like, we don't know at this point. And so that's never a good sign. I will say percent-wise, maybe it's hitting like 20% of our advertisers and impacting. And a few have like gone from a lot of room prepping for Prime Day, not great timing overall, prepping for Prime Day to send products in, and they're suddenly 10% over and they've got to take products out.
Yeah.
And it's tough because like the back of my mind is saying maybe Amazon adjusts. They realize like this is kind of crazy, but you can't plan on a hope, right? And so a lot of our advertisers are pulling out product if they need to based on inventory analysis. It does make it incredibly difficult, but also looking at 3PL and being able to back it up, like thinking Prime Day, right? Back it up where if FBA gets maxed out, and maybe they sell out, right? And they've got to send in an FBA, but you've got cutoffs at the end of May to be able to like make sure it's ready for Prime Day. They've got some other type of shipping ready. It's not great because a lot of those will be merchant fulfilled, later delivery dates. But I think the worst case scenario, thinking Prime Day, but in general, is you run out of inventory, you've got to send it in. That's delayed by Amazon, and you're suddenly out of stock. We've got some sellers doing almost like $1 million, and their AOV might be $15, right? So they're tens of thousands of inventory, and they're suddenly condensed, and so they're the ones scrambling. And I really think everyone's learning
Yeah.
as we're navigating this. But I think the biggest thing is the 3PL shippers and making sure you've got a backup, and then taking out product that is high in inventory but low sale velocity is a good place to start.
So it is interesting because if you have a very aggressive PPC campaign and it hits it, let's say you're in that honeymoon period, and all of a sudden you've got a great listing, the PPC is taking off, and you're off. You're going strong. Now you throw more inventory at Amazon, and it starts to peter out. I'm looking at this yesterday, going, oh my God, we have product on order. The changes were made. So the product it's still going to Amazon, but when it hits Amazon, we're probably going to have to remove it.
Yep.
Because we're over. Unless we do something, and now we're thinking, okay, how do we create a PPC campaign or something to just drive sales? Can we lower the price? And that whole strategy is really up in the air. One of the things that we're trying to do, is figure out a few strategies for our listeners. It is bloody tough.
It's tough, and like even the PPC side, that's a very good call out. We're looking at that with a few clients, but in a lot of the instances, we're already at like the return they want. We're crushing it for them, and to go more is tough. And I know that's a weird way of phrasing it. To essentially scale PPC to make sales happen, there's that point of diminishing returns where it's not even like you go from a 30% ACoS to like 40. It might go from like 30 to 60, depending on how much of that space you're already owning. And so I like the idea of maybe discounts and coupons, but then the flip side is a lot of our clients are like, hey, it's actually going to be more cost efficient for us to remove it than to either give coupons and discounts or push a lot on PPC. And so similar to how you asked about expectations for PPC, it is definitely advertiser by advertiser. But to your point, like some of these are good things to be thinking about for anyone listening. But we're still all navigating it, and it's a lot of testing and really planning out as best as we can with something that is still an unknown how long it lasts.
Okay, so because Kelsey told me to do this is the second time. Remember, if you like what you're hearing, to hit those like buttons, subscribe to our channel, ring a bell, whatever it is that you have to do on social media. But we do have a great giveaway. Chris is going to be auditing your account. It's about a $500 value. If you like and Brett's going to be doing it as well. So Brett's the CEO of the company.
He's going to be surprised, but
he knows a little bit. He knows just a tiny bit of stuff, doesn't he? So he's going to be helping out as well. So you've got a 2-for-1 deal, and that's hashtag Wheel of Kelsey. And also one of our super listeners, Rad, is going to be giving away a product as well. So that is hashtag Rad. I think that's what it is. If it's not Kelsey, just put it into the comment section. All right. So let's go back to, before we go on to some other strategies, just the common mistakes to look out for when you're setting up campaigns. You've already talked about setting it up, but are there any things that just come to mind, common denominators?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to be careful not to go so in the weeds. So my mind is like, yeah, so you want to build this auto like this manual like this. I think, the first one would be figuring out what campaigns you're building. Like we have our checklist that's basically, I think it's a dozen. It changes. Amazon's updating their campaign offerings. that says, all right, for sponsored product, we have an auto. We know there's a 4 match types within it. We have a strategy for each one, what we're going to do with loose match versus close match, right? There's different purposes for each. We've got our product targeting for sponsored product. Okay, we got brand defense, competitor targeting. We got the keyword. We want brand segmented from non-brand, and that right there is like 5 campaigns, right? And so understanding the breadths of what you plan to build out, setting different KPIs for each one, and it sounds complex, right? Like when I go through each one, it's very simple, but I think putting it all together in one piece can be tough to start. But I think the prep work is the biggest. And I'm somebody that normally will start with moderately conservative bids and budgets, and rather bid up into traction and figuring out that sweet spot, especially if it's newer, right? If I got data for a product and building a new variation of a campaign, I'll look at the existing CPC, the return, conversion rate, and then base it off of that. But if I'm brand new, I'm not going $500 budgets and like $50 bids or even $5 bids. I might start at like 50 cents, 80 cents, depending on the category and product, and bid up incrementally. It used to be back in the day, and maybe some other people do this. I'm not a huge fan where you come in strong, maybe you have an auto, really high bid, high budget. Some of that's for keyword research. Some of it's like that view of a 2-week grace period for a new product. You just blast it, right? And then you pull back. That can work sometimes, but I've found that can be a waste of money. And if you're newer, you don't want to get a bad taste in your mouth for PPC. You don't want to push and be like, hey, it didn't work. And that's one of the things that I've kind of seen in a lot of audits where they've tested either PPC in general or more likely one campaign type. They've pushed it maybe a month, returns not great. Instead of optimizing and changing things and reviewing and pivoting, they pause it. And in these audits, I'm like, hey, you're not running sponsored brand at all. Oh yeah, it didn't do well. This is like 2018 and it spent like $1,000 and they're selling like 500,000 a month. And I'm like, that's not enough data. And also there's best practices not put in place. Certain things were done that probably shouldn't have been. So I think the prep work, the layout of what should be built, and knowing that if something's not working, review it, analyze it first. Don't just give up on it and say, hey, this doesn't work. Sponsored products is crushing it. I'm going to pause all sponsored display because that returns 50% A cost when sponsored products 40% or 30%. Because one of the things I've seen with the accounts I look at, the top culprits, and tell me if I'm going on too much of a tangent, but
no, go ahead.
The top culprits that are not built or utilized much is sponsored display, product targeting, right? And that's brand defense, owning your own space, and then going after competitor targeting. Sponsored display views and audiences, I'm not the biggest fan of those, but I always build them with low bids, low budgets, test them out. Like 1 out of 10 might do great. Like even for myself, I know it's not all the time that it will do well, but I'm going to build it. I'm just going to structure with lower bids budgets to control it. Sponsored brand ASIN targeting, man, I very rarely see that build at scale, if at all. And I love that one because similar to sponsored product and sponsored display, you can target your own ASINs, but it's in search results for a lot of it. And so it's more of just the view of owning the real estate on Amazon. If somebody's searching for something that you're already showing up in either sponsored product or organic, and it's not always branded, right? So you've got that elderberry supplement we know you're selling. And let's say somebody searches for Norm's elderberry supplement. Well, then it may show up because it's branded. But if somebody searches for elderberry supplement for guys with beards, it may be that ASIN is showing up in organic results, and that sponsored brand ASIN targeting is tied to that. And so it shows up there. And even though it's a brand defense or a brand ASIN targeting, it's not a brand search. It's just a real estate enhancement. The other couple, sponsored product ASIN targeting is not done a ton. And I would say that if you build those out to the full ability that they can for all your products, I feel like a Geico commercial. You can increase your sales 20% in 20 minutes. I really think that you can see a marked improvement in ad sales by 10 to 25%. I was running the numbers prior to this call. Sponsored display overall is usually 2 to 10%. Average is like 5 or 6% of all ad sales for kind of the average for each account, right? So if you're on a sponsored display, I would say 5 to 6% would be good. You could be as low as 2, could be as high as like 10 or 12. Sponsored brand video. That's one I forgot. Everyone should be using that. Sponsored brand video is usually 5 to 12% of advertising ad sales. Sponsored brand is 5 to 20%, and each one's incremental. But if I had to add up everything not built, I would say it equals probably 20 to 35% ad sales that could be boosted that are not used at all. And I love that, because if you're not using it, it's not like, oh, well, it cannibalizes current campaigns or current things I'm running. It's like, no, you're not using it at all. So it's just a straight add-on in terms of performance. And it's crazy to me because it's so simple. Each piece is very simple. It just takes time. And I like to think with Amazon, you don't have to be a rocket science to run ads for it. You just need to be consistent. It helps to be analytically driven, but even then, if you're just consistent and do the fundamentals, you're in the top 80% already in what you're running.
Are there any of the campaigns, I know you've gone through a bunch here, but are there any campaigns that you'd probably say hold off on? You know, it's probably on the lower end of return.
I hate to say like hold off. So maybe the perspective of like
Test.
And once you've built everything else, come back to it. I would say at scale, like sponsored display audiences, I would do it for your top products. And if it doesn't work for them, it's harder to fathom it's going to work for your other products. Doesn't mean you're not going to continue testing. But I would not spend all my time at the beginning just building out sponsored display audiences. If I were to stagger like performance-based priority, I would say I'd probably do sponsored product manual campaigns, sponsored product auto, and autos are so easy to build. You do them at the same time. I would do sponsored brand video next. I would do sponsored brand keyword targeting, sponsored display product targeting, and then sponsored brand product targeting. And the thought is for those last three, sponsored brand product targeting, sponsored display product targeting, and even sponsored brand a little bit, they're all going to be like 2 to 10% of your ad sales. So it really depends on a few things. And the biggest thing I would stress if you're listening is build out the full gambit for your top, let's say 3 products if you don't have a ton of time. And then gauge which campaign type is doing the best, right? Because I could look at one client we run and maybe sponsored brand product targeting is doing 3x better than sponsored display product targeting. But in another one, it's the inverse. And so I would kind of stagger them that way as just a general rule. But I would say build out everything for your top products and then gauge based on your category of products and what you're running, where performance is best, repeat that. But honestly, like our view at the agency is just knock them out, build everything out as fast as we can. And that sounds like overkill or like we're not being strategic with it. But the view I take is if you've got a product doing 100K a month and you've got a product doing $100 a month, within some time period, maybe it's a year, right? If you've got a lot of products, that $100 product should have the same campaign structure built for it. The only caveats I could think of offhand is like, if it's not retail ready, if the reviews are terrible, like if it's just a bad product, maybe you don't want to run ads at all. But if you're considering running ads, I would still build it all out. The differences would be based on campaign settings, bids, budgets, and overall strategies. You may spend $10 on that $100 product and $10,000 on the $100,000 product. But I think what people don't think on is, especially if you got a lot of products, if you can boost, I don't know, 1,000 products by like $50 a month, right? Or even 100 products by $50 a month. And that's with this like full build out, right? Which is a lot of time initially and then ongoing is less. That's 5,000 on the 100 products. It's 50,000 on those 1,000. And it adds up. That 20% adds up. But kind of to your question, I would focus on the top priority first, but just never stop. I think of that movie, Never Stop, Never Stopping, the Justin Bieber kind of play.
Right.
But that's my view.
Okay, very good. So, Kels, let's get to some questions.
Okay, yeah, we got lots that came in. Just a second. Okay, so Tony, for brand ambassador, for brand sponsored ads.
Sorry, Kels, you gotta like dial up internet or something. Maybe you want to go to high speed one of these days.
I should, yeah. Pay me more. But can you hear me now? Is my audio?
No, it's. Let me see if I can blow this up so I can read it. Or Chris, if you've got good eyes, maybe you could read
I
it.
can read it. Yeah.
All
So
right, let's do that.
for brand sponsored ads, should I stick to broad match? Phrase and exact match don't get much impressions. So the view we take is we do run all match types. We'll normally negate in the broad and phrase match what we're targeting, especially the exact match. So broad and phrase or discovery, exact match is scale. I'm biased with higher bids for exact just because you know what you're bidding on. It should, in theory, perform best, but as I think most of us know, it's not always the case. Broad and phrase do play an important part, and it could be certain times where, like it is here, that a certain match type that you might not expect, broad match, is doing the best. I don't know specifically like what bids are given for these match types. Like Tony might have them all at the same bid. Well, then broad match just has a higher propensity to show for a lot of variance, variables of what you're targeting. So the view I would take is I usually start with broad match X amount. Let's say it's 50 cents. I might go phrase match 60, 65 cents, and then exact match 80 cents with negatives on the broad and phrase. And I'm okay if one match type kind of takes off, and I'll kind of stoke that fire. But then for match types that aren't kind of getting scale, I'll have to dig deeper into why. It's hard to tell in this case, but I'll incrementally bid up. I'll make sure I'm targeting the right terms, that I'm adding in converting search terms from the broad match to the phrase and exact. Because in theory, if he's getting a lot of impressions and sales on the broad match, you're getting new search terms most likely, because broad match just says what you're doing that. And those should be added back, especially to the exact match. And if it's got a higher bid, it naturally should kind of scale up to that match type. Not all search terms, but in general. And so I really never go to just one match type. I would stress use them all, and then kind of stagger the bids and make sure I am converting search terms, and then just keep digging deeper. It's not a negative that broad match is the only one with volume, but usually it's based on a bid or the targeting that causes it to not get impressions.
All right. Next question, Kels. Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah. How would you rank two listings that are similar products, but only if the texture is different? Most of the keywords are common for both the listings. Not sure I fully follow that. If it's for advertising, like how would you split them out or put them together? I can talk through that, unless Norm, you have a different interpretation.
No, and I'm not sure who the Facebook user is, but if you want to clarify, but yeah, go ahead and answer.
Yeah, so if these products are under the same parent ASIN, I would group them together in mostly the same targeting campaign types, things like that. Sounds like in this case it probably isn't. So just whatever it is, whatever the product is, the texture is different. I normally look at this and say, okay, what are the similarities? What are the things that are very much the same between the products, and utilize that in sponsored brand targeting, pushing that. I will consider, and it is case by case, combining them into a sponsored product and normal campaign structure for terms that both are going to basically go after the same. I don't always do that. Normally I won't, because I just want each one to have its own ability to say, will it work, right? So if you've got, I don't know, linens, and one's wool and the other's not wool, I don't know my linens well, you may go after the same terms on some. I usually prefer separate campaigns, because each one should be given its own chance to see performance-based. That may change as data comes in. Maybe one's doing much better, so you kind of pull back on the other. But I really like to look at what are the unique identifiers. So in this case, the texture is different. Okay, what search terms are different? Hone in on those in these different campaigns that you're running, for separate campaigns for each product, and push that more. It's hard to answer that specifically if I put them together or not, but I'd have to see that more. And then I'd highlight that in sponsored brand, right? So being able to talk the broad kind of search terms. In this case, let's say it's linens, right? You can take those and just showcase your two texture types in the sponsored brand campaign and be able to show the differences. And so if somebody doesn't know what they're exactly looking for, they can see the variants you have. I think that's probably how I would answer that best with the info given.
All right. How's my internet now? Is
Oh,
it
it's horrible.
okay?
Nope. All right, next question, Kels. Let's see.
You
Is
want me
there? I'm going to try to read this. How about we
Okay.
do that? Is there a limit? Is there a limit for this computer can't go back far enough? Is there a limit for how many keywords you can put in each ad group? I have a campaign with 40 to 50 keywords in one ad group, but I'm finding that half of my keywords don't even fit or doesn't fit into any impressions.
Yeah, it looks like it doesn't even get any impressions. And this is funny. I should know this. I want to say it's still 1,000. I never touch that. I never go that high, so it's not something that I like test the limits on. But I think it's 1,000. To answer it from my view, we view less as more. Like you can get hundreds of keywords, 1,000 if you want, but how are you going to manage that? It just doesn't function well with the algorithm, in my view. And so we'll normally run 50 to 100. I think the most we normally see is like 150. And it's not that like when you go past 150, things crumble. It's just when you use broad phrase and then exact, you're covering most of the bases you want to cover. And if you've got auto running as well, that it's more about scale and momentum behind it and not just throwing a lot of things out there and just hoping they grow. In this case, I would say half getting impressions and hopefully spend in sales is actually pretty decent. It is the case often that you probably have like, I don't know, 10 to 25% of your keywords bring in 50% plus of your sales. Especially when you're looking at broad and phrase, because something will anchor that. Maybe it's a root term, and that will bring that in. And so I don't look at that as a negative at all. Ideally, the more traffic traction you can get across terms, the better. But if you're finding that half are not getting it, I would first look at the bids and maybe look at the suggested bids and kind of dig deeper into maybe what competitors are doing and then figure out a game plan to incrementally test bidding up. And then I would also, if it's broad and phrase, view the search term report and see if maybe those are bringing in the terms that you're already targeting. So let's say it's broad match and you're targeting elderberry, and that's got like most of your spend in sales. But then you got a keyword that's elderberry gummy supplement that has like minimal impressions. Well, maybe elderberry, that broad match, was performing really good. So you bid up on that. And so that other term, elderberry gummy supplement, has a lower bid at this point. And so that term's already being covered. And so I think understanding, are you actually missing terms, or is it just a keyword level that has low traction impression, does matter. And then if you really aren't getting it as you kind of bid up, it could just be you're not relevant for it. Amazon's not finding it. And based on your margin, break even, there's a point where you probably don't want to bid up more, right? If you've got to bid up to $10, it's not worth it. And then this is kind of just a light tie-in. It's always good to kind of quarterly refresh keywords you're targeting, looking at brand analytics, keyword research. There's tons of tools for that, and always looking at converting search terms to see if maybe you're missing anything that you can add in. That doesn't answer the half of the keywords not getting impression, but it's just something I would also include.
Okay, great. What are your key measures to use to check if an agency is hitting best performance?
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of ties back, Norm, to what you were talking about, setting expectations. I would say to know this, you need to know what best performance means, right? For one advertiser, it could be huge scale at a certain ACOS or tacos. It could be efficient growth. It could just be bringing down tacos and keeping sales. And so to answer that, I would say you need to set expectations with your agency, and hopefully they're setting it with you and asking you the right questions that says, where do you want to be the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years? We'd like to kind of talk high level on that with our clients. And it's tough. Amazon overall is always changing. And so it's hard to say specific sales numbers and know them 2 years from now. But I think having that discussion of what you're looking for, what are your goals, is helpful. And then the agency should be providing substantial reports on what they're doing, what the metrics look like that the expectations are based off of, and then bringing up any challenges and concerns they're seeing. Like now we're going year over year, with looking at COVID spike, and some of our advertisers, a decent amount of supplement industry, like with Elderberry, are seeing where last year they were up like 100%, and this year they're like up 5% or flat. And that's something as an agency we made sure to talk about leading up to this year over year. So they're not just saying, hey, we're up 100%. Why aren't we up 100% again? And kind of it goes both ways. If the agency isn't asking the right questions or even talking about what's your strategy and where you want to be headed, that might be a light red flag that they're more just based on the numbers. Okay, you want this, we'll get to that. Yeah, but what you're trying to get is based off of a rationale and a strategy behind that. So I think just expectations, communication, and feeling the buy-in from the agency that they're constantly thinking where you want to be is the first step. And then based on reporting and what you're seeing on the metrics, if from there you kind of see if it's that best performance you're hitting.
I've seen, this goes back to what we were talking about a little earlier, but some agencies start out with really incredible talent, but they explode. Everybody hears them. They might be somebody speaking at a conference, and all of a sudden these amazing results.
That's what's going to happen after this podcast. We're just going to get
there we go.
plans.
But it's hard. It's just like, if you don't have the proper policies and procedures, SOPs, it's really tough to bring in, recruit newer people. And, sometimes you've got to talk about that too. When you're talking to your agency we talked about at the very beginning is, who am I getting? Like, what kind of experience? Have a conversation with that person. So, and on top of that, you got to kind of make sure that your personalities match.
Yeah, something we started, and Chris Brewer kind of pioneered this, and I know he's been on the podcast a couple times. I don't know if it's Enneagram or there's something that we'll pull from potential clients to see like kind of where they are personality wise. And that helps us either decide if they're not a fit. There's certain ones that we're like, yeah, that's a tough one. Unless there's a really clear cut kind of path to working together, we'll be transparent and be like, hey, this hasn't worked out normally. And that's rare, but normally it helps us kind of pair them with the right account manager, the right specialist, and say, they're going to fit so well with you because we know at least high level where your personality's at.
Right.
And we found that to work really, really well.
Okay. Let's give Kelsey one more shot.
Okay. How is it? Good, bad?
We'll try it. It's still choppy.
Okay. We do have a lot of questions. So I know.
What's your time like, Chris?
I don't know how.
Let's go the rest of the day. I've got a few hours.
All right. So we got 24 hours of questions here.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So from Andrew, do you guys use PPC software or bulk files? Also, what do you recommend for a small brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is going to sound funny, but up until like end of 2019, we weren't even using bulk files. We were just doing manual. So like opening up all the campaigns, the ad groups within them. And the reason there is I feel, especially at that time, that automation just was lagging behind, and the ability for the specialist to be in the account at that in-depth of a level, you start to actually see the terms that you're targeting. You see the numbers, and you're actually part of that company a bit more. And so when you're on call with clients, you're like, hey, for this product, Elderberry, here's like search term level data, right? Analysis at a granular level. Starting in 2020, we went bulk files. So we found that kind of putting the right parameters in place where we're not just doing formulas, we're manually reviewing, has allowed us to streamline how we optimize without giving up that manual approach and the visualization into the account. And we do it a couple times a week, but usually one main optimization. I know this wasn't asked, but like we don't try to like touch things like every day. We'll look at things every day, and if there's something really off or crushing it, we'll adjust that immediately. But we'll look at different windows, 7, 14, 30, 60 days, and kind of our own system of within each month, how many times we're going to do which timeline. And we find that works really well. At this point, I think I can optimize account bulk in like 20 minutes. So it is much more efficient. And I think there's good automation software out there. I don't know if and when we'll ever go to it. I still like that approach we take. To your point, Norm, as an agency, like we've grown, to me, a lot. It was just me 4 years ago. Now there's 12 of us. But it's still small enough that like almost everyone that's working with us has been with us over 2 years. I don't think we've had anyone ever quit or leave. And so it's kind of just a very intimate team in the sense that we know our clients. We take on a small amount, and even though the bulk and the not automation takes more time, it's the way we do it. It just feels the most effective. And then for a small brand, that's an interesting question. I guess it depends on, it's a small brand, like brand new. Is there sales attached to it? Because I'm slightly adverse to automation, but I don't want to push that too much because there are good tools out there. It does work in a lot of ways. I think you miss some of that personal touch and ability to look in the account. I would recommend bulk opt. You build out the campaigns and once a week, even if you're busy, everyone we talk to on Amazon is like, hey, I get the advertising. I don't have the time. I'm running a business here, right? And we'll come in, we'll help kind of accelerate things. And I think we do that well. I would recommend bulk, but you have to kind of learn it. Once you get it, it's going to be very simple. If you have no time at all, I think automation is better than nothing. And there are tools out there that can do the basics well. They don't build out all campaign types. I know they're progressing, but I don't know if they do sponsor brand ASIN targeting, sponsor display, product targeting.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I would look into that. So ideally, you're doing bulk. Automation would be the next one. But it really depends on your time and if you have money to kind of pay an agency to do it. Though you can test things out yourself pretty easily. Like you pick one product, you build out the gambit of campaigns, spend a little bit of time just to get used to it. And it brings up a good point that even if you use an agency, you should know PPC at least high level. You should know the campaign types. You should know the questions to ask. So you're not just saying, oh, cool, guys, weight cost looks good. You're not questioning. You want to be able to ask and collaborate with whoever you're working with. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
At what point should like a smaller agent or a smaller seller might want to go to an automation app? At what point do you think that it would be best for them to look at an agency? Where would the sales kind of be targeted?
Yeah, great question. I'd probably look more at the profit to it. So like, let's say you're selling 50 grand and your margin's 30%. So, before spending anything on ads, you're making 15K. Let's say you're spending 5K and you're using automation and it's like $500 a month. At this point, I don't really know the number we're at. I think 9,500. That's your end profit, right? So you're doing that. And let's say it's working well. Let's say you want to go to agency and they're charging 2K, but they offer more campaign build out, things like that. I think at the base level for like that first, 3-month period of working with an agency, you just don't want to be losing more than you're making before. So that 1,500, if your margins, the 1,500 extra. So if you're doing automation for 500, let's say the agency's 2,000, you need to make basically 4,500, $5,000 more in sales to make that 1,500 in profit to be able to pay this agency and have them pay for themselves. So like one of the things we look at as an agency when I do this audit is say, first off, can we pay for ourselves in the first month? We're usually accelerating pretty big brands. So more often than not, it's like, yes, absolutely. And then from there, okay, at what point do we start to bring more return to the client? Is it second, third month? We don't know, but we'll know at this point. So I think I would run the numbers there and then talk to, let's say you do an audit or you talk to an agency and you say, hey, just be transparent. Hey, this is what I'm selling. You don't have to say what you're paying for the automation software, but you can just say, hey, I ran the numbers. I need sales to be here if I'm paying you X amount, and then tacos to be here. And that way we at least pay for ourselves and then ask the agency, hey, can you beat that? Like that's just like the baseline. So we can start working together and I'm not losing money. And then what's the ceiling do you guys feel? I think like that's how I look at it. And it's different because I'm not an advertiser. I'm more on the other side where I'm like, if I do an audit, if I don't think like I do some audits for accounts that might be selling like 35,000 a month, right? Which is really good. Those excite me because there's a lot of potential for growth, and then you're talking to the person running it, which is always fun. I love my job because I talk to really interesting people. I've got a guy, I don't know, selling 10 mil a year, sorry, out of his garage. He's like, yeah, I tried this selling stuff on Amazon, and now I'm crushing it. So what I would say is, like, when I look at that, I'll give them all the recommendations I can and say, you're not going to make more money working with us because we'd have to boost your sales 10K maybe. And based on the numbers, I don't know if we can do that, right? But here's where you should start. And then when you get to that point, come back to us. I think of an agency, to your point, at some point in this podcast, you mentioned sometimes it's pitched like, oh yeah, we can do that, right? Or you're overselling and you just want to get them in. That's not good for business. It is short term, right? But like word of mouth, I think, and referrals are the biggest thing within the Amazon space, especially for us as an agency. And so if the agency that you're talking to isn't being clear with that, or they're just promising you the moon, that's kind of a red flag. So I would just ask the questions, tell the agency, hey, here's where I think I need to be to afford you guys. And then where can you get us past that is a good starting point.
Okay, very good.
From Tony, video ads in competitive categories or keywords, can anything be done?
Okay, I'm reading that as he's got sponsored brand video ads running, but even with high bids, he's not getting traction. That's a tough one. We've got some sellers in the pet category, and then certain supplement categories are like the most competitive in skincare, where even with like $10, $12 bids, which is more just like the test space, we've gone as high as $20, are getting nominal traction. Or at that point, if they are getting traction, they have to convert at like 200%, right? To even like break even. And so what I would look at, similar to I think one of the other earlier questions, is what are you targeting, right? If you're targeting broad terms and you're not getting volume and you've got really high bids, and it's funny, I think I listened to Brian Johnson's podcast like twice before coming on because I want to like prep like for the flow, and he brought up like, maybe that doesn't work. And so going longer tail, testing other terms, making sure you're utilizing broad and phrase match because that gives you more of an opportunity to show, I think is a great place to start. You could test other videos, but at that point, you're not even getting shown, right? So if you're not getting impressions attached to it, I wouldn't rush to be like, oh, let's test another video, unless it's like a bad video. Then at that point, you probably should be running a better one. So I think it's more, make sure you're using the match types, do further keyword research, try to hit longer tailed. I would test, like if you're getting absolutely nothing, I would take a campaign or two, set a budget, maybe 20 to $50, and just set a really, really high bid. And maybe incrementally do it, but let's say you're at 5 now, put it at 10. The most you're going to spend is that budget. So if it doesn't convert, you're kind of using that as a test and you're spending that money to see, like, is it a bid thing and it's just crazy competitive, or does Amazon just say I'm not relevant? The other thing is if you test that and like you get nothing, you might not be relevant, which takes the next step to be, look at your product page, look at what you have going on versus other competitors in the space that are ranking for these keywords, see what's different, and try to set up some kind of game plan towards optimizing your product page or adjusting things to be relevant. And that's a tougher thing, but I think those are the things I would look at to start.
So again, we still got lots of questions. It's 1:12.
We'll take
currently, so.
just a couple more.
Okay. All right. Nice and easy one. Andrew, can you assist with Australia market?
Short answer is yes. We work mainly in all markets available. So yeah.
Okay. This is a two-parter from DK. Different people have different strategies, aggressive versus conservative. What would happen if I set up campaigns for both simultaneously? Example, 2 separate campaigns for the exact same keywords at the same time, but each with different bid and budget settings.
Okay. I would say initially I love testing. So like fundamentally, I don't think I would ever do this, but if whoever asked this question, you just want to find out, like, it's not the worst to test it. One of the things that I kind of seen from my audits is people not testing enough, right? Think outside the box. If it doesn't work, you change. I will say though, for the same terms, I don't really see the benefit to it. I know there's been kind of pitched like waterfall effects. I think that's mainly auto, but where you kind of have higher bid and higher budget. When that turns off, it goes to the next one and onwards. But I like to get scale and momentum in one main campaign for whatever campaign variation I'm going after. So if it's sponsored product, keyword targeting, and it's exact match, I want that campaign and ad group to just scale and scale. And so I don't see a lot of benefit to going after the same terms and different bids. I'd rather, let's say you've got, bids at $2 on the exact match, just run that for a little bit. If you're not getting the traction you want, move it to $3, $2.50. I'd rather test within the same campaign I'm running than have two. And it just, I can't see you getting enough data to be like, oh, cool. Here's what I learned, because Amazon may show more for one than the other, but it could just be maybe that campaign was built first or just got data to begin with. Like there's so many variables, I guess, that I personally wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend testing aggressive and conservative in the same campaign. If you want to say, okay, I've got campaign doing well, and I want to see if I can scale and still be somewhat profitable or hit my KPIs. To do that, do it for at least 2 weeks. I do my kind of increments in 2 to 4 weeks, and I'll check within at these periods, but you need some data coming in. And so pushing those, and then if it doesn't work, or you pull back. If it does, you keep pushing. I think that's great to test. I don't think I'd recommend the two campaigns simultaneously with the same exact terms.
Okay. Let's do Dr. Cause and Andre, and that'll be it for today.
Okay, so from Dr. Cause, I see more and more that when I start a campaign, only 3 to 5 targets get most of the attention. Do you have advice on how many target keywords, phrases to have within a campaign?
Yeah, so this one's kind of similar to the question from the other user with like 40 to 50 and only half are getting the terms. I don't think my answer would change much. Starting off, I think we normally do 50 to 100 keywords, and then they'll scale as we add converting search terms. If it's a very niche space or tighter budget, we might start with like 20, 25, and it really depends on the search volume, the keywords out there, and a few other things. And so 3 to 5 is low, but I don't know if you're targeting 10 or 1,000. I would keep it to start under 100 and then incrementally bid up if you're not getting traction. And kind of like that other question, dig deeper into what those causes might be.
Okay, and the last question is, I used to have 60% PPC sales, 40% organic, and about 20 to 25% ACOS. Since 2 weeks, it's been about 30% PPC, 70 organic, but my daily sales fell 30%, and my ACOS is about 40%. What could be happening?
I feel like this is a question you get like at school, and it's like if a train leaves, at 10
Yeah.
o'clock, and then you're like, oh, okay.
I'm glad you're answering this one.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I can only assume, and I could be wrong, that as the ACOS has increased, maybe these campaigns have been optimized down, right? Because maybe it's been based on that ACOS that's been potentially stable at 25%. And so as it's increasing, you're probably bringing it down. And that kind of potentially is a snowball effect that brings your PPC sales down, but the organic stays solid. So that percents get higher for organic at 70%, but your sales are 30% less. So the organic may not change a ton, but it's your PPC dropping that makes the ratio different. So that's one thing. And sometimes you have to bid down if the return's just not there. But something we talked about earlier, it's like ACOS matters, but tacos is king in a lot of places. I don't want to use that to say, well, ACOS is higher, keep pushing. But that's something to factor in where check your profit, right? If you're making less now, maybe things change in the competitive space or for PPC in that category recently that 40% still works for you. More likely than not, though, like I would say for you to dig deeper into, okay, where did it actually drop? Usually if I looked at this, it'd probably be one campaign type or a couple pieces that are the main cause of this. And then, okay, is it the specific search terms? Did a bid get changed? Like you want to kind of reverse engineer what happened in that small period. And it's great that you're thinking about it now. We have some accounts we talk to, and it's like, oh yeah, the past 3 months things have gotten worse, and it's like it's harder to diagnose 3 months of data when it's like that far back. If you're 2 weeks in, you can look at brand analytics for the terms you're targeting and see, did the search volume change there? Like, did competitive landscape change? The new products come out? You can look at BSR ranking for yourself compared to some of your competitors. Has that changed? Did you change anything on the product page? Like, I can go on and on. But I would say diagnosing where it dropped and then trying to determine why is probably the best place to start. And then acknowledging, like, maybe you do need a higher ACoS for a little bit to kind of get back on track while you're figuring it out and then setting the right things in place. That's the best I can answer without looking at data. I could probably diagnose it in like 30 minutes digging in, but for the user, I would just say dig in, search some reports, the campaigns, look at it in the space of time that you're talking about. And I think you'll find a couple things that stand out.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll give you a couple of, about a minute to, if you haven't entered into the Wheel of Kelsey, hashtag Wheel of Kelsey for the hour-long consult with Chris and Brett, please do so. And we also have one of our listeners, Rad, giving away one of his products, the 4-in-1 solar charger. So, and that's hashtag Rad. Okay, so while we're waiting for these last few people to come in and enter, how do people get a hold of you or the company?
So great question. So our website, omgcommerce.com, is a great place to start. Gives information on what we do, about us. We have a blog as well. And then Brett Curry has his own podcast, eCommerce Evolution. And you can find that on our website or go to eCommerce Evolution on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And look for me. I'm on there like 3 or 4 times. So those are probably the ones to listen to.
All right. So, Kels, I think it's about that time.
I think so. Okay, here we go.
It's time for the Wheel of Kelsey.
All right.
That's pretty awesome.
And now he's mute. I still can't hear you, Kels. You're having a bit of trouble today.
How about now?
Okay, there we go.
Okay. All right. So this is for the consultation.
Okay.
So I'm just going to shuffle everyone's name up, and here we go.
This is about a $500 value too, so it's a great prize. Okay, I can't read that. Who is it?
This is, I think it's called Zalusha, but it's from a YouTube account.
All right,
so,
and Zalusha is a new listener, I think. I don't recognize the name. Yeah, so congrats.
Awesome.
Okay, and then for our Rad giveaway, we got one more wheel.
It should have been hashtag radical.
That's Fridays.
Oh, okay.
All right, so I'll shuffle. This is for US and Canada only, but Here we go. 3, 2, 1. This is for a 4-in-1 charger, courtesy of Rad. Okay, another new winner.
All right, congrats.
Harry Casson, also from YouTube. So thank you very much. And yeah, we'll get in touch. Just email me at k@lunchwithnorm.com and I will connect you with Chris and also get the shipping information.
So, Chris, we held you on the line, about 20 minutes later, but we really appreciate it. You gave us a lot of information. We didn't even get to 3/4 of the questions that I had for you, but we'll have to have you back on. But I really do appreciate you going an hour and a half with us, and you answered so much. I mean, you dropped a lot of nuggets here, so thank you.
Of course, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And tell the elusive Brett that I'd really like for him to come on the podcast and say hi to Chris for me too.
I will.
All right. Okay, everybody. So thank you so much for watching the podcast today. It was a really great podcast. I learned a lot myself. Unfortunately, Kelsey's internet Dad will
I
buy
know
you
what's
high
happening
speed.
today.
Dad will buy you high speed. So don't worry, okay? That's your salary. Okay,
Yeah.
so what do we got?
Okay, so first of all, let's see. On Friday's episode, we have Henry Kaminsky. He is a brand doctor. He's got his own podcast, The Brand Doctor. But he's going to be talking about how to grow your sales through market market funnels. I'm just having the worst day today.
You
But
need a
yeah,
hug.
yeah. So tune in on Friday. Also, if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to today's episode and to the podcast. You can find all of the information on our YouTube channel. That's Norman Farrar. Also, you can join our Facebook group. That's where I highly recommend everyone goes. That's where you can message me and Norm. We do a lot of memes. It's a fun place. We connect with the audience. It's a good place for the community. And that's Lunch with Norm, Amazon FBA, and eCommerce Collective. And yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the questions today. And thank you to Chris again. I think everyone appreciated how in depth he went with all the questions. So we love that. And thank you for everyone. And I'll talk to Zulasha. My email is k@lunchwithnorm.com. I'll put it in the comment section as well.
Yeah, so today we noticed, or at least I noticed, a lot of new listeners. So thank you so much for listening today. You can join us every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And if you're new, you probably haven't heard about our newsletter that doesn't suck. You can go over to lunchwithnorm.com and sign up for it. It's just content about digital marketing, Amazon, e-com, how to become a better seller. So thank you. Thank you for joining our community. Thank you for being part of the show, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Lunch with Norm.